What does a champion feel when he sees his greatest rival lifting an important trophy? On the ATP circuit, where every point can change a season, even the best players watch others' victories very closely. Jannik Sinner's triumph at Indian Wells, after defeating Daniil Medvedev in an intense final decided by 2 tie breaks, was not only a great moment for the Italian. It also triggered an interesting reaction from Carlos Alcaraz, who remains the world number 1 and one of the main figures in this new tennis rivalry. After the Indian Wells final, Carlos Alcaraz watched Jannik Sinner's celebration with a mix of respect, ambition, and a slight competitive smile. The Spaniard was not on the center court, but he was paying attention to every point of the duel between the Italian and Daniil Medvedev, a tense match decided by small details. For a competitor like Alcaraz, seeing his rival lift the trophy is not just another scene on the tour. It is a signal. A reminder that the top of tennis is constantly shifting and that every victory by someone else is also a challenge. When the match ended and Sinner raised his arms in the Californian desert, Alcaraz wrote a brief message on his phone before speaking with his team. It was not frustration that dominated the atmosphere, but analysis. The player from Murcia had fallen earlier to an inspired Medvedev, and now he was seeing how the Italian had found a way to overcome him in 2 extremely tight tie breaks. Those kinds of finals, Alcaraz thought, are the ones that define seasons. While some see a champion celebrating, he sees patterns, decisions, moments of pressure, and opportunities to improve in the future within the tour. According to people close to his team, Alcaraz's initial reaction was very simple but revealing. He looked at the screen, nodded slightly, and commented that Sinner was playing with impressive calm. There was no sign of anger, but something even more dangerous for his rivals: motivation. Alcaraz understands that his rivalry with the Italian is becoming the driving force of this new era of tennis. Each title won by one automatically raises the level of the other, creating constant pressure that forces improvement in every aspect of the game. In the locker room, the Spaniard reportedly also commented on how difficult the match between Sinner and Medvedev had been. The baseline exchanges, the precision on serve, and the mental composure were elements that did not go unnoticed. For Alcaraz, those types of finals show something beyond talent, they reveal mental endurance. And that, in his view, is where much of the battle in the biggest tournaments is decided. In matches where nobody gives away break points, the mind becomes the most powerful weapon. Alcaraz also acknowledged something that many analysts were pointing out: Sinner's evolution in decisive moments. The Italian, who in the past had struggled to close some matches, showed remarkable composure by winning 7 consecutive points in the second tie-break. For a player like Alcaraz, who lives for competition, that kind of detail does not go unnoticed. It is a sign that his direct rival is not only winning tournaments but also growing as a competitor. Far from feeling threatened, Alcaraz seems to enjoy this situation. From his point of view, having a rival like Sinner chasing him in the rankings is exactly what tennis needs. On more than one occasion he has said that great rivalries are what push players to reach their best version. And while the Italian lifts titles and closes the points gap, the Spaniard remains convinced that this pressure will ultimately raise his own level even further. Another interesting detail in Alcaraz's reaction was his analysis of the match against Medvedev. The Russian had shown an extremely high level throughout the entire tournament, including the match in which he eliminated the Spaniard himself. For Alcaraz, seeing how Sinner managed to overcome such a solid Medvedev offered important clues about what is changing on the tour. Power, endurance, and baseline consistency are reaching increasingly extreme levels, and the margins for error are minimal. The Spaniard also valued Sinner's impressive serving efficiency during the final. Winning almost every point behind the first serve in such a tense match is not common. That kind of performance allows a player to survive even when rallies become brutal. For Alcaraz, who bases much of his game on aggression and variety, seeing that evolution in his rival is a reminder that modern tennis demands increasingly complete weapons. Within his technical team, the conversation after the final reportedly focused on small adjustments. Not radical changes, but details: improving certain serving patterns, optimizing some risk moments, and strengthening decision-making in points of maximum pressure. Alcaraz knows that the margin between him and Sinner is very small. That is why every tournament becomes a laboratory where he can study his rival and find new ways to beat him. There was also room for respect. Alcaraz has always spoken well of Sinner, and this occasion was no different. According to people close to the situation, the Spaniard commented that the Italian deserved the title for the way he handled the toughest moments of the match. Recognizing the rival's merit is not a sign of weakness. In elite sport it is usually the opposite. It means understanding the level required to win again. However, behind that calm there is also a clear message. Alcaraz remains the world number 1 and knows that the season is long. Indian Wells is only one battle within a sporting war that will extend for months. The Spaniard still holds an advantage in the rankings and trusts that his explosive style and adaptability will once again make the difference in the biggest tournaments. That is why, while the crowd celebrated Sinner's 25th title, Alcaraz was already thinking about the next tournament. That is the mentality of champions. Rivals' victories are not experienced as personal defeats but as fuel. Every trophy lifted by Sinner adds a new layer to a rivalry that many believe will define tennis in this decade. Jannik Sinner's victory at Indian Wells not only confirmed the Italian's enormous level, but also reinforced the narrative of a rivalry that is gaining more and more prominence in world tennis. With Medvedev returning to his best form and Alcaraz leading the rankings, the tour is experiencing a moment of enormous competitiveness. For Carlos Alcaraz, the reaction was clear: respect for the champion, analysis of the match, and renewed motivation. Instead of worrying about Sinner's victory, the Spaniard seems to see it as an invitation to keep evolving. What does a world number one feel when his first defeat of the year finally arrives? For many athletes it would be a hard blow, but for Carlos Alcaraz it may mean something very different. After losing to Daniil Medvedev at Indian Wells and seeing his streak of 16 consecutive victories in 2026 come to an end, the Spanish tennis player surprised many with a sincere reflection on the pressure of being the target of the entire circuit. His words reveal a lot about the mentality with which he approaches this new stage of his career. Carlos Alcaraz's defeat to Daniil Medvedev at Indian Wells ended an impressive streak of 16 consecutive victories in 2026. The player from Murcia arrived as the world number one and one of the big favorites of the tournament, but he faced a rival who played probably one of the best matches of his season. The final result, 3-6 and 6-7 with the second set decided by a tie break, reflected an intense duel where every rally demanded absolute precision. For Alcaraz it was not only a sporting defeat, but also the moment to express something he had been feeling for some time. In the press conference after the match, the Spaniard delivered a phrase that caught the attention of fans and journalists. Alcaraz admitted that sometimes it weighs on him to constantly be the player everyone wants to beat. He explained that it can be exhausting to carry that permanent pressure, that kind of burden that appears when you are the world number one. Every rival steps onto the court with extra motivation, trying to claim the most important win of their tournament. However, far from looking discouraged, the player from Murcia spoke calmly and naturally about this reality of elite sport. Respect for Medvedev was one of the first things he wanted to highlight. Alcaraz publicly acknowledged that the Russian had played an extraordinary match from beginning to end. He even commented that he had rarely seen him compete with that level of aggression and precision. The Russian dominated many baseline exchanges and forced the Spaniard to run constantly, something that eventually disrupted the usual rhythm of Alcaraz's game. That immediate ability to analyze the situation demonstrates the competitive maturity Alcaraz has developed over the years. During the match there were key moments that made the difference. Alcaraz explained that in some games he abandoned his usual structure of play and began reacting rather than proposing. That caused him to end up chasing Medvedev's shots instead of imposing his own rhythm. For a player who bases much of his success on initiative and controlled aggression, losing that control can be decisive. Even so, the Spaniard emphasized that he fought for every last ball, something he considers essential in any important match.